Well, good morning, everybody. As we start off today, just want to right away let you know that there have been some important shifts, I think, in the medium-term weather forecast. Everything out for the next 2 to 3 weeks we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. But one thing the models, I think, did a very good job at finding was this large winter storm or spring storm system that's rolling through the midsection of the United States right now. So this was last night, just as the sun was setting here. There's a couple of just very interesting pieces of this I want to pull out and just have a quick discussion about. I'm going to start first with what's going on down here in the southern plains. And if we take a look there, let's go back to last night. You're going to see two things I think of great importance. First of all, you can see the deeper convection is pushed farther to the east. This has been a major concern of mine throughout this spring, that we're going to see the rain shadow effect of the Rocky Mountains down here into the southern Rockies be something that likely extends farther to the east than we would typically see due to maybe some greater momentum in the atmosphere, some stronger westerly winds during the spring, and just leaving this on this frame where you can see the widespread dust in this area. My greatest concern is, where do low pressure systems eject, and are they capable of returning moisture, to this critical part of our southern plains growing area? So that's going to continue to be a theme until it's not. The second part of this is where the intense convection was. Nearly 30 reports of severe weather last night, including 6 tornadoes and a lot of hail, on this side of that dry line where the warm moist air was being, just thrust into the lower atmosphere, producing these storms. But that dust storm there has really caught my attention. Now, if I take you to the other side of this I want to look at, which is New England, this is just as the sun was rising this morning. Just an incredibly deep low formed off of the coast yesterday. But look at the northern edge of its cloud shield. So I'd love to be there to see that. These are always fascinating to look at. So perfectly clear sky here. Then you're underneath this really high, thin cirrus shield. And it's just kind of neat to look at the demarcation. But I'd like to take you back to yesterday when things cleared out. And we can just see how much snow fell in parts of the Northeast. There were some places in through here that picked up 12 to 18 inches of snow. We look back over the last 72 hours. What I'm showing you here is the beginning of our first system, the heavy snows that stretch from parts of New York to Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, some places, again, 12 to 18 inches of snow. And we're going to watch as more snow gets laid over the top of this region, parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota and Nebraska today, as the low kind of fully reaches its maturity and moves its way toward Ontario later. But this was kind of the front half of the system, so widespread 4 to 6 inches of snow, pockets here of 6 to 10, and a few places in parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin that were approaching a foot already through last night. And what we're going to see here is what it looks like as it goes forward. So this is looking back at the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation. I want to point out a couple of things about this map that I think are going to be valuable. First, in the upcoming forecast, some of the areas that had seen a much more active look at the last part of March into the first week or so of April, there's been one significant change that's going to impact the precipitation, I think especially along our western mountain ranges and then in the plains and Midwest of the United States. And that change you're going to see in a few moments is in the position of a large blocking pattern that's been developing south of Alaska. Secondly, one neat thing about this particular map, if you're looking here in the northern plains and you see these blotches, most of what goes onto this MRMS, that's the name of it, this MRMS precipitation map is coming from radar data. It is supplemented everywhere that there is rain gauge. And I want to just point out this region here in the northern plains where you see these blotches, because what happens is in this area of the country, we don't necessarily have the widespread weather stations that can be used to supplement where our radar doesn't have good coverage. And what I'm talking about here is maybe along the border between North Dakota and Montana. So notice you have good precipitation measurement near the radar. Why? Because when the beam starts out low, once it leaves the radar, it undercuts all of the precipitation following, gives us a much better representation of what hits the ground. But the beam propagates up and away, and that's because of the curvature of the earth and the slight tilt that we keep the beam at. It's about a ½ degree. That's the lowest scan. So we just miss it in certain areas. And I wanted to point that out. While I am here, I would like to discuss specifically parts of Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. We've talked about this for weeks. This has been an area that has been kind of at our epicenter of Midwest drought. And how much moisture did we get this weekend? Where we're looking at these total accumulated amounts here. Well, if I take you back out and show you this color bar, we see a lot of this range, which meant that we've made about halfway through what I was hoping to be able to get out of these next several systems coming through. Now, again, that's not to take away from any other spot in the country, but I just wanted to focus in on those two areas so you could see what I was watching. So let's just get a quick look back at the last 18 hours. This is the whole cyclone kind of wrapping itself up here. And we have blizzard warnings that are out for this whole region today and through here as the stronger winds have settled in as that snow comes through. There are storms this morning in parts of Iowa, and we're going to watch the southern front on this thing to kind of rip through parts of the Mississippi Valley later today, increasing the risk of severe storms. So I just thought I'd take a quick look at where the lightning was early this morning. This, again, about 6 o'clock when I was recording this, coming through Iowa, but also down here, Arkansas, Oklahoma, getting into Texas, where we're still continuing to watch some pretty vigorous storms. Now, this low has an interesting shape to it. If you go to the low levels of the atmosphere and look at the winds, here's that low I mentioned a moment ago, bringing that beautiful cloud shield in early this morning here. But as this low wraps itself up, a lot of warm air advection out ahead of it. This is kind of the position of the cold front. Also, I would call it part of where the dry line is located. Actually, the cold front's probably tucked way back in through here. This is just the furthest extent of where some of that drier air is. But very, very strong winds. But take a look at the length of the low. This is one of the reasons why this system's going to take a little bit of time to occlude as it gets farther to the north. It's not yet tightly wrapped up into a single low. And that's partly, I think, because in the upper levels of the atmosphere, we've got several pieces to it, okay? There's the broader trough here. There's the jet streak coming around the base. There's a trough there. There's a little trough here, a broader one there. I mean, there's multiple little short waves within this broader wave that I think are influencing where the rising motion is happening and where the low is going to continue to deepen. So all of that is to say that what we've got here is our latest all hazards weather map and a broad area of wind advisories today across this area of the Ohio, Mississippi River Valley. Our blizzard warning back here starting in Colorado, going to parts of Kansas, Nebraska, and into South Dakota. Winter storm warnings extend ahead of this. And there's going to be this risk right along this area and through here that we could get some ice out of this system, so we'll watch that as well. We have quite cold air early this morning over in parts of North Carolina, where we're going to continue to see frost risk. We'll come back to that in a few moments as well. So on the severe weather side of it, the Storm Prediction Center continues to kind of bullseye into this region of Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana later today for an enhanced risk of severe storms. But again, we saw the thunderstorms already early this morning here, which is why the Storm Prediction Center had this marginal risk out for this part of Iowa and Missouri. If we go forward into tomorrow, possibly some storms into Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, maybe Kentucky and Michigan. We're going to watch the tail end of this going through parts of the Florida Panhandle too. So let's get to the snow side of it. What's left in this system? So this is a 72-hour forecast, looking at the chance of getting 2 inches. Let's go ahead and step it up to 4 so we can kind of hone in on where that heaviest snow band is going to be. Right in through this area. That's where we'll keep our closest sign. Here's the chance of getting 8 inches. It just continues to increase as you get toward Ontario. All right, so let's go have a look at it. This is the high-res NAM starting at 7 a.m. this morning. So if we play through this afternoon and this evening, we watch the heavy rain spread through Missouri into Iowa and Illinois, right over the top of the Mississippi. And that's why tonight we'll be keeping a close eye on this region right in through here for the strong to severe storms. Notice the snow on the backside getting into parts of Kansas, into Nebraska, South Dakota, and the isobars tightly packed together gives us that risk of the winds being over 35 miles an hour and sustained. And then this low, because of all those little shortwave troughs, are going to pull this thing north. You're going to see in the overnight hours the risk right in through here where we have the risk of some of that ice. Okay, that system rolls over Lake Superior, tightly wound, strong winds. The frontal boundary comes all the way over to the Appalachian Mountains by tomorrow afternoon on Tuesday, and then it curls itself into Ontario before heading up to kind of the Hudson Bay area. Now, remember, last week we thought we still had 3 more systems to follow this one. So we had our lead system 1, that was system 2. This could be the beginning of system 3, but the question is, how well do systems 3, 4, maybe 5 get here? And this is where I want to show you some of that change. All right, so we've talked about this. We've seen that low come screaming up here. This is through tomorrow night, getting us into Thursday. Now, this was the system that I had thought would come across the country for Easter weekend. this deep trough right here. But there's a couple of interesting things happening. Notice the ridging that's pushing up between Hawaii and the Aleutian Islands toward Alaska. In last week's model runs, that stayed relatively flat. But right now, by Friday, getting into Saturday, we kind of break this off almost into it kind of looks like you're like a high over low setup. And so that's going to slow everything down. That's more meridional or north-south flow than west to east. So now, instead of having a system coming through the midsection of the country for Good Friday through Easter weekend, there's a ridge. And that's going to knock those temperatures or push those temperatures back up and leave the coldest air in the west and leave a low off the coast of California. Now, we also predicted that low, remember, to come barreling through California, loading up the Sierra Nevada mountains. I told you last week, I expected 5 more feet of snow over the next 10 days. 5 of those days are still left. And this low here, it's not making the progress like we originally thought it would. So this is just a nuance of short-range weather forecasting. I missed it. And that low, it looks as though it's going to get caught underneath this ridge. And this is all the way out there to Monday. And we play into early next week. Then it gets brought across the country, but this is no longer that powerful system number 4 that I thought. And system number 5, which is still here around the 4th and 5th of April, we got to wait to see if it truly develops like this, because that's what system 4 looked like last week, right? So just need to be aware that there are some nuances to this pattern due to ridging happening in the North Pacific and some in the North Atlantic as well. But we need to do something with all that and try to assess what the models are taking those troughs and where they're putting down precipitation. So let's compare the GFS to the Euro. We play this out through Monday into Tuesday morning. This is Tuesday evening, getting into Wednesday morning here. We're going to start off with the next system following it. So as you watch, keep an eye on this guy. This is this Thursday. Watch the direction it goes. See it slide right along the west coast? Here it is on Thursday afternoon. And by the time we get to Saturday afternoon, it has moved north-south. It did not come across the mountains. Now, could it still deliver good snows to the Sierra Nevada? Absolutely. But last week, we thought this system would be here. And it didn't. That blocking setup pushed this farther to the south. And that's going to keep a lot of warm air for the beginning of this weekend, in this area. There's still cooler air tucked away to the north, and the snow cover is going to influence that. But when does that system come out? Well, here is Monday or Sunday, getting into Monday. And that's when the system starts to make its move out. But the models are a bit, out here next Monday, Tuesday, not really showing the same progress of the system. There's a bit of a disagreement here. You can clearly see next Tuesday between the models. So let's kind of compare them. ECMWF first. Let's blow that up once to get you a better view. And let's take it out 7 days. So that's our new 7-day forecast. Most of this coming from the current system. The GFS is here. Similar overall look, but you saw the difference in the timing once we get past Sunday when that low comes out. So that's where the change is going to be. Let's compare that to the WPC, Weather Prediction Center. This is what their outlook is. So still, there is snow coming into the Sierra Nevada and the Cascades, but it is a lot less than I thought a week ago. That's for sure. Let's add the AI system onto it. This is a 7-day forecast from this morning's AI run. And while it continues to keep better moisture west because of the north-south sliding of that system, the Canadian Prairie, the Southern Plains, drier, more precip. Of course, this is still to come today, but the systems rolling across the south continue to keep that region really wet, which has been something we've been discussing. So we just got to keep an eye on it. Snowfall side of this, let's go to the European first and just play this out. That's through the first system. Now, about this time, remember, watch the west as the low slides from north to south. And now what you get is out there 7 days. Instead of the Cascades adding up 2 to 3 feet, which is what we thought a week ago, and the Sierra Nevada adding 4 to 5, we're now seeing these numbers down here around 12 to 18 and 18 to 24. So just want to point that out as a difference. The system coming through here is narrowed a bit, as you can see in the forecast. So this is what's left in terms of its snow, and that's what the GFS has for it as well. Now, the GFS is still big on snow in the Sierra Nevada, but I got to think that trend is downward. How about some probability maps? I'm going to show you a little different view of the snowfall probability because I want to let you know that these next few systems still have colder air to tap into in the west and in the north. So this is a 24-hour chance of getting an inch of snow. So what I want you to see is this is now playing through the middle of this week. Now, as we go forward, interestingly enough, did you notice what's coming down there into the southern plains? We saw that in the comparison between the models a minute ago. That would be, from Tuesday into Wednesday. As we go out there into this weekend, watch the west. But then when do we get this system to come out into the middle part of the country? Well, this is Easter Sunday. And as we play into that first full week, I just want to point out that the models are still trying to show some more snow here early next week in this area. We kind of saw it in the forecast between the GFS and the European, but it's not as clear as to when that snow might come through. So now that you've seen that, let's go to 1 inch chance and let's take this all the way out to 10 days. And just remember that most of this is dominated by the current system. If we look at higher amounts, this is a chance of 6 inches of additional snow over the next 10 days. That's what you get. I mean, we were worried about much more in this area from these next few systems, but things have shifted a bit in the weekend model runs. On the drier side of this, the Canadian Prairie, the southern plains, still my focal areas. Whereas on the wetter side, this is the best chance of getting another inch of liquid in the next 10 days. So there you go. These are the changes that we watched all weekend long. All right, did that affect week 2? Did that affect temperatures? Let's get into that before we wrap this video up. The CPC, is still on a more active pattern, I think, than the other two models are. Notice how the European in the center and the GFS over here on the right don't show as strong of week 2 forecast anomalies as they kind of had last Friday. It's just important to note that that blocking setup really kind of changes things up for the cadence of low pressure systems coming through. But to get over to the temperature side of it, this is what we have in terms of our frost risk today, through the next 7 days. And those high temperatures are going to do something like this. So today's highs, very cold in the western plains, north, south, and the western plains. We get into tomorrow, that cold air advances east. There it is by Wednesday. But watch this, Thursday into Friday. Now remember, last week we thought a system would roll through here. Instead, it's going north-south along the west coast, and that just opens up a ridge. So on Friday, a lot of 60s, 70s, and 80s here in the central plains getting over to the Midwest. And then we get into Saturday, and again, a broad area opens up for quite a bit of warmth. The coolest conditions stretch right here, and that's just where we have that snowpack that's in place. So that is Saturday. I mean, gosh, you now know there's a ridge there, so we're not talking about a major wet weekend in this time frame, but a lot of warm air that wasn't well forecast a week ago, and that would be Easter Sunday here. Okay, let's get out there beyond this and take a look at the day. I wanted to show you this. I've been showing you accumulated GDDs up to this point. This is what things look like over the next 7 days. And really impressive forecast just to see all that warmth that wasn't there originally in the forecast coming back. So day 5 through 10 keeps it like that. Now, over the weekend, I was quite annoyed. Each model run gave us a new outlook for the day 10 through 15. Now, you know that I've been saying I still think the beginning of April, maybe up to like the 10th through the 15th, hangs on to a cooler bias for a lot of the country. And the models went back and forth on it. There's still not an agreement on this. I think it's because of the way that the North Pacific jet stream is all bunched up now. But what you've got here is the day 10 through 15 from the GFS, and watch the European. It's actually keeping cooler air south, but a more mild signal here. That's a lot different. Sorry, that's the day 10 through 15. That's the European. That's the GFS. So there's much to be learned early this week about the jet stream in the west, which really reduced our predictability in a big way. By the way, that makes me just want to look at this. I should have done this before this, but my good friend Ryan Maui puts out that fork. Yeah, well, we've started to drop off in our skill scores. I don't know. I got to think harder about this because I certainly didn't like watching between basketball games the models flip-flop all the time. Okay, where are we going from here? The CPC released this on Friday. This is their mid-April, the 6th through the 19th outlook for temperatures and precipitation. And I got to be honest, a lot of what I think they're doing here is using what we all thought, which was that El Nino fading would contribute to this map. And so I've shown you this a dozen times. This was my analog forecast for April for the whole month. And the new CPC forecast does kind of look like it, doesn't it? There we go. I did fix my typo here. I did not see that I had early plating windows. This had nothing to do with dinner, had everything to do with planting. Question is that really going to be there? And the reason I bring this up is because the newest European model, well, it has the beginning of April a little cooler, but watch the warmth return right around mid-month, right here. Midsection of the country, quite warm. The west, this is a feedback on snow. I really think it is. But a significant warm-up following tax day. And that's going to continue to be my narrative, I think, as we go forward. Any warm-up we get between now and then, I think it lasts for a few days, but we keep returning some cooler air. I think we break over fully warm in the midsection of the country starting around tax day. That would be my current estimate. On the precipitation side of it, I mentioned a minute ago the early windows. All of April is shaping up to look like that according to the European. And that's actually got a little bit of a wetter signal in this area. This I completely buy, but maybe here we should watch for a bit of a drier trend after this next system goes through. That may show up in the models. And I apologize if I'm kind of, I injured my back pretty badly last week, and it is quite painful, and I'm sorry if it's a bit distracting in the way I'm thinking this morning. I'll get it taken care of and get back on a more smooth note with all of you. So I appreciate your patience as I go through this. But I want to take you from there, and to finish this up, just to remind you of my analogs and then get quickly to South America to finish this up. So here we go. Early March rains kind of helped eat away at some of the dryness that was in this area. We watched that, right? We saw some better moisture coming into this region. And there is a low. I know it looks like it's spinning in the wrong direction, but you're in the southern hemisphere. So there's a low right now in this part of western Brazil. Plenty of moisture getting fed into this. And this is what we saw in the forecast last week. So we just start adding up rain. The beginning of this week is quite wet, right into this area where we grow a lot of safrinha crop. That just takes you out about a week right there. And we see even some storms in Argentina, a little drier in southern Brazil, but there's moisture coming into this region. And we just have questions as to how long does it last. Well, the week 2 forecast is drier comparatively, and we still look out there and say that through the beginning of May, this region continues to be forecast to get on the drier side of things. If this is a major concern with high probability of happening, the MJO has to come out of phase 7-8 and get over into phase 4-5. That's what's got to happen, and it's just slowly collapsing into this area. So we'll have to watch how that all occurs. As we reformulate our longer range forecast, a lot of it's going to be built on the changes in the trade winds, which I'll be honest, when you see this much blue on these Hofmuller diagrams, this is stronger than normal trade winds. And that's another indication that this El Nino will continue to fade in this region as we get into spring and likely be into weak La Nina at some point by summer. So all part of the longer range narrative. We'll keep going. But with that, I'm going to wrap this one up and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.